Today we have with us Wayne Worth, correct?
Yep.
And I found him on YouTube, and he's going to give us an overview of kind of the different areas of West Virginia. He's toured the state multiple times, from what I understand, and he's going to help us understand maybe a little bit more about the different areas and help you get an overview and be able to decide maybe what area of West Virginia you like better. So to start off, Wayne, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do and how you know about the state of West Virginia?
Well, I always tell folks that it's not what you do, but why you do it. And with the On the Road in West Virginia, our 55 county series, it was that project kind of gave birth to more of like why I did that project. I'm not originally from West Virginia. I was born in Connecticut. I'm 42 years old, so that probably puts me born in 1978. And for the first probably I'd say 10 years of my life, I was in and out of foster care in a group home, and then finally I was adopted by a single father in Pocahontas County in a little place called Minnehaha Springs, population 60, and that changed my life for a long time, forever, even to this day. It was the first time that I had a stable family. I had opportunities that I never thought were possible, like being a college graduate and becoming a licensed social worker and having success in life and getting involved in many different projects. That upbringing was not only by my new adopted family, but it was also from my community there in Minnehaha Springs, since it was very, very small, population. Walmart was 40 miles away. Grocery store was probably 10 miles away, and it was pretty small. And, people were really close knit. They, the whole token of the whole saying of community raising children, that's pretty much the way it was. If you got in trouble in Minnehaha Springs, it got to your parents before you got to the door. And I never forgot that. It's where, I first went to church, where I first found God. And those experiences you never forget. And then you grow up, you're 19 years old, you're a young man going to Marshall University, and sometimes you get sidetracked on, what was important growing up, because you're 19 years old and you're trying to find yourself in life. And that was me, and that was kind of a, bumpy road, going through college, made a lot of good choices, made a lot of bad choices. And then never landed me in jail or anything, but still, and none that I think I ultimately regret, but things that did set me back, and that really stemmed back from prior to being adopted, some of those other issues like codependency and stuff. But I was working in a group home one night in Huntington, a little place called Timeout Youth Shelter. It's no longer there, but I was working a midnight shift, and here I was 25 years old. And when you're working midnight shift and everybody's asleep and you're trying to fight to stay awake, you have a lot of time to think. And one thing that I thought on that evening was, how blessed I was to be raised here in West Virginia. Like every dream that I ever had, came true here in West Virginia. And most people would laugh and be baffled by that because we're a small state and a lot of people pick on us. But, my view of West Virginia is very different from those folks. And, like I said, it was a place where I first found family, stable family, opportunity, love, God, all that stuff. And I just felt, in my heart, I wanted to get to know more about this place that, I call home now. And here I am, 25 years old, don't have a clue in life of, what I'm doing, where I'm going, pursuing an elementary education degree, but not really going anywhere with that. And so I just decided one day that I was just going to jump in my 1988 Chevrolet Corsica that had like 300,000 miles on it at the time, and I was going to drive to every county, and first it was every county seat, just to get to know this place that saved my life. And it wasn't necessarily, to get to know, like all the cool things about this place, but get to know the story of these places.
Mhm.
And so I read Hardesty's history of the 55 counties, which was like, it was grueling, you know, it was blood just to read that boring history.
Mhm.
But it kind of gave me a roadmap. Like, you know, when I came to Fairmont from Huntington, I knew a little bit about Fairmont. You know, when I went all the way to Davis, West Virginia, and Tucker County, I knew a little bit about it.
Mhm.
So it took me about 6 months to do that tour, and found out a lot about myself too. And the one thing that I found out was that, you know, this place was truly home to me. It was gonna be home, you know, for the rest of my life. You know, with exception to 1 year that I moved to St. Louis, Missouri, to help my brother, you know, get some economic opportunities out there, because
Mhm.
he had cerebral palsy and he was an artist and really wasn't doing much, you know, in Huntington, and plus had a master's degree. And you know, I took the sacrifice, was out there, you know, 10 months, and then I couldn't wait to come back. So I was homesick.
Uh-huh.
So that was really the first tour through all the counties, and then in the second, I liked it so much that I decided to do a second tour, and it was to kind of hit the areas in each county that I didn't get to see before, and learn about those places. And then the third time, my brother Chris, that I moved out to St. Louis, he wanted to go through all the counties. And of course, he's in a wheelchair and stuff. Smart as a tack, just can't walk.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, we would lug him around to every county, and that trip, that tour through the counties, really really meant a lot to me, because he challenged me. He said, you know, Wayne, he goes, you could tell me about these places all day long, and you know why that bank's there or why that house is there, you know, but you know, I really want to get to know, like, why people love this place so much.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to stop and ask at least one person in every county, you know, what makes this home to them, why they love this place so much. And some people would have 2-hour conversations with you. Some people would just be 10 minutes, you know. Some people would say, I can't wait to get out of here, you know. But most people were like, to them, it was home, you know. It's where their roots were, is where their history is, where their politics are, is where their church is, where their school is, you know. I mean, and that, you know, sort of, you know, built that culture for them. And so for me, I was like, wow, I really got to learn a lot, you know, about every county in West Virginia. And then when I came back home, you know, from St. Louis, I decided not to live in Huntington. I wanted to live either in Fairmont or Clarksburg, because during a couple of those tours, you know, I just thought this area was just more me, you know, had a lot of Pittsburgh influence. You know, it was, you know, up and coming economically, is along Interstate 79, only 2 hours from home, which is Pocahontas County to me. You know, because I'm an outdoors guy, I like trout fishing and stuff. But you know, to me, you know, it was a good community to really, either Fairmont or Clarksburg. Of course, I landed in Clarksburg. It was a good community for me to land, to set up some roots, and to really not only try to, you know, make a difference, you know, in my own life, but in others' lives, and serve. But with that, you know, I decided that, you know, I wanted to take a fourth tour through all the counties. And so I drove to every county, well, 44 of the 55 counties, and I interviewed over 106 historians and CVB directors, and just anyone that knew about the place that they loved and called home, and had all this, still have it, all this raw video of them, and you know, just telling the story of their home, and you know, made some videos out of it, really long and boring ones, 45 minutes long, but you know, to me, I think it was really good, and I still gather a lot of information, you know, from those folks. Unfortunately, that project didn't really come to its fruition of all 55 counties, because when you go around the state to every county and you're interviewing folks, a lot of the folks that know the story of their county are a lot older. So sometimes I was 6 months late; they passed away, you know, or some of them just, you know, they're historians, so they like to research better than being behind camera and talking. So for me, it was sort of I would say for me personally, it was sort of a disappointment. But later on down the road, it ended up being, you know, one of the great assets that I had to make the On the Road in West Virginia, our 55 county series. So with all that said, now really the why, I do this project. It was because, this is my way of not only giving back, but paying forward to the state that brought me family, brought me community, brought me opportunities. And I never forgot that. So, the On the Road in West Virginia, our 55 county series, I don't make a dime from it. It's totally free. I put 40,000 miles on my vehicle. I spent over $10,000 doing this. I spent 14 years getting to know this state to where I felt comfortable enough with telling the story of each county. And, so the On the Road in West Virginia series started pretty much in a crawl space in Clay County in 2016. We were helping, we were very involved in the 2016 flood recovery. We're volunteering every single weekend, in very, very, tough conditions, from shoveling muck to pulling, duct work out of crawl spaces that were full of tainted water. I mean, it was just horrible. So my friend Jonathan Kimball, which in the videos I called a teleprompter dude, which is just a 8x5 sheet of paper, when I would write the script and do the research and go out and film these. He was the guy that, would always run the camera and get me lined up and put up with my grumpiness and my hangriness. Hangry means you're hungry and angry at the same time. Because, when you drive 3.5 hours in Monroe County and then you spend half the day filming in Monroe County and you forget to eat, I'm not really the most tolerable person in the world, and, especially when the big trucks roll by or whoever, it's just, but, video editing is like that, it's all about lighting and sound. And so that's what, I was trying to do. I was trying to make something a little bit more professional than what I did, with just interviewing folks. So Johnston and I in this crawl space were hanging insulation for a couple of elderly folks on the Elk River in a little place called Procius, which is in Clay County. We're hanging insulation that, in this crawl space in this house that got 4.5 feet of water in it. And it was hot, and it was just, just this muggy in that crawl space. You only have like 2.5, 3 feet. And in this crawl space had like three different levels to it. It's like you went through this one door in your second level, another door in your third level. You're kind of, running with the male black widows that if they bite you, you just catch the flu. Females will kill you right on the spot. But it was interesting. We were hanging insulation and Jonathan was like, Wayne, he goes, I would like to go to all the counties like you have and just, take a picture of all the courthouses and just get to know each county a little bit like you do. And I said, really, Jonathan? I said, that's interesting. I said, because, I'm really kind of itching to do this project. I said, I don't know really what I want to call it yet, but I want to do a little video history series that I just narrate myself, in under 10 minutes of each county of this history and all the cool things, and I have the technology to do it, which is really not a whole lot, but I said, I need someone to really help me with it. He goes, well, I'll be more than happy to help you with it. I said, okay, here's the deal, man. I said, you literally, this is going to be a lot. I said, I've been there all the 55 counties on purpose 4 times, and by accident probably 20 times, so it is, West Virginia is although it's a small state with the mountains and the curvy roads, it's very vast, a lot of time consuming travel. And so anyway, he was on board. I said, look, you can't just do 35 counties, say I'm tired now, don't want to do it. I said, you better do all 55. He goes, I promise you. And he did, and he was quite a trooper. So we started up in the northern panhandle. Hancock County was our first county that we filmed in. Is the first county that I produced and put on Facebook. It ended up I didn't really expect the Facebook page to, to take off like it has. I think it has like up to 54,000 followers now. I expected maybe to get a couple thousand people to like it and follow it, and that was it. Well, the first video at the end of the week after we posted it had 100,000 views. I mean, there's not 100,000 people in Hancock County, but there's probably 100,000 people that are interested in Hancock County because maybe they used to live there, maybe they used to work at the mill there in Weirton. I don't know, but it was, to those folks it meant a lot, and so I was then freaked out. I went home and I told my wife, I said, I'm done with this. I said, I'm not going to do this. She goes, do what? I said, travel all the counties and film the rest of the 54 counties. I said, I had 100,000 views, on the Facebook page. And I said, on this one video, I said, what if I get something wrong in a county? I said, they will never invite me back again. And I said, and that would just crush me. If there was any county in West Virginia that said Wayne Worth was not allowed here, it would really affect me big time. And she's like, well, it's Facebook, Wayne. You could always edit it. You could always say sorry. People are very forgiving, especially if you're honest. I was like, that's a good point. So we did the rest of the 54 counties, and 14 months later, we ended at Holly Gray Park. That was our last film shoot we did. It was Holly Gray Park in Braxton County. Beside the Flatwood Monster chair. And it was quite a journey, it really was. It was probably, to me, I felt in that moment in time, I felt like, I still serve a lot in my community, and I still do a lot across the state. I'm still, filming and videoing the State Forest series. Just got finished with the State Park series. Going to do the rivers, the history of the rivers afterwards, where I'm going to take a trip from where it starts to where it finishes, and tell the story all the way down it. I'm pretty excited about that. But I think after I finished all the counties, being the first person to ever do it in the state's history, video wise, I felt like that, I could die the next day and I would be totally, I feel like I would have given back and paid forward to West Virginia the blessings that was given to me. So that's the On the Road in West Virginia series, our 55 counties. That's the why and the what.
Awesome. So you said you just finished the state parks or forests?
State parks. There's 36 state parks in West Virginia. I think now 37. Because Buffalo Creek in Clay County, I think they were just designated as a state park last year. I have to do a little more research and see, but I may have to run out there and make a special trip and do that. All the parks are filmed, except the last closing skit at Beech Fork Lake State Park, which is in Cabell County. Well, straddles Cabell and Wayne County outside of Huntington. I got to borrow my buddy's boat this summer to do that, and then all the parks will be posted on the Facebook page and the YouTube page, which will be 36 of them. Wow. And then we've already done filming in 4 state forests. There's 9 state forests, so we're going to do the rest of the 5 this summer, and hopefully I could start, on a couple of rivers. Doing the history of the rivers is going to be a little difficult because, say, if you have to do the Elk River, and then you have to drive up the scenic highway in Pocahontas County, and then you need to start there. That's where it comes out of the ground as a spring, and then kind of follow it down through Slady Fork, tell a little story about the logging industry, make it through Burgoo, Webster County, and then through Webster Springs and on through Sutton and all the way down into Charleston, where it ends, downtown Charleston, where it goes in the Kanawha River there, at the Civic Center. So the rivers are going to be a little bit more difficult, but I love it. It's just like I'm going to get to spend, a couple of days camping along that river and along every river, just telling the story, and of each river in West Virginia, and the industries that grew about it, how the towns grew, and and how that river was really influential, impactful, in that community from an industry standpoint, from a cultural standpoint, from a historical standpoint, from a tourism standpoint, whatever it may be, that I'm going to really get down deep in talking about those rivers. That'll probably take me, I say, about 4 years to do.
I would assume.
Yeah, and then after that, I think COVID here in about 4 years will either kill us all or it'll be totally gone. Then I can start doing the fairs and festivals again when people are more comfortable about doing that and kind of telling the story of the fairs and festivals, because there's no better way to gauge a culture of a community than this fair and festival. Fairmont, it's the Three Rivers Festival. Mannington is the Mannington Fair. No matter where you go in West Virginia, in Spencer, West Virginia, is the Black Walnut Festival. Tremendous stories behind these fairs and festivals, and I just want to capture those and share those with the rest of the world. But that's going to take about 4 years to do. 4 more years before I start that. So,
boy, you've got plans.
Yeah, it's fun. My thing is, it was kind of interesting because after we did the counties, everybody was boo-hooing about it because they're on Facebook. Oh man, this is going to be terrible. Great. We really commend you, and we really love your series and everything.
Oh,
but
people are going to come.
People were like, we're just sad it's over. I'm like, and so I'm just thinking in my head, what do I do? What else can I do? Then the state parks. People love the state parks. Although those videos are 2.5 minutes long and not, 5 to 9 minutes long. Yeah. But people love the state parks and the state forest, and I think they're going to really love the rivers. That's going to be a very, because I'm going to go, kind of personal and tell the stories, like of every river that touched, any place, and how that place grew, that's going to be home to a lot of folks. So
it's going to be interesting to see if you can dig up some of the pictures of the places that have been torn down along the rivers, like in Mannington.
Yes, absolutely.
Because I don't know, we just took out the big, used to be a hotel or whatever. My dad said back in his day, that building that just got torn down, the river was high enough that they docked at it.
Oh, wow.
So, it'd be amazing if you could take out pictures of that, but it's gone now. It's like the whole building's gone.
And that's the one challenge that we have had, too, is that, they do tear a lot of things down. That recently, since, we had all the counties, produced and put on Facebook probably by, I'd say, May of 2018. And since then, there's been a lot of demolition of old historic sites.
Unfortunately, it's kind of necessary. It's like
it is,
Like a lot of places in West Virginia, they were built with money, and then the money disappeared.
Right.
And buildings that were built with money require money to keep up.
You're right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you look at like the the brick glass factory up in Wellsburg. That was a huge thing, but I think they demoed it, and but they had to put a fence. It was a super fun site, and no one's going to be able to, keep that upkeep and turn it into a museum. Sharon Steel here in Fairmont was the same way. Had to tear that down, along Speedway Avenue there. And, there's a lot of places. I could just ramble them off, and each place that. That had, during its heyday, a lot of money was put into it. But as the population decreased and, a lot of the industries kind of waned out, it would take a lot of money to revive those places and to retrofit them into something else. Yeah. So it's just probably more cost effective to tear them down.
So it's not exactly where I was planning on going with this, but I'm going to ask anyways, because you seem to know maybe some of the influences that would do this. I have a lot of people ask me, like, why is West Virginia so poor? Why is this area so poor? Why is there all these empty buildings? Like, can you, from your history standpoint, give a brief, explanation in your opinion and or knowledge of, where did all the money go and or why is there just so much poverty and whatnot in West Virginia now?
Well, you have to, we're for a very, very, very long time, and even sporadically every once in a while with oil and gas, we're mainly an extraction state. So we have a lot of extraction industries, mainly coal. Coal kind of arrived on the scene in West Virginia, and probably, I'd say industry-wise, big time. Probably, in the 1880s. They first found coal. And I think it was John Peter Sally or John Peter Sailing, whatever you want to call them. Either name's good. Up in a little place called Potona, which is in Boone County along Route 3. He was the first to discover coal, and that was probably in the mid 1700s when he was following Daniel Boone, out out west, to really, explore the Cumberland Gap in that area where they happened to be along the Big Coal River, and there's a little punch mine there, and they kind of dug out a rock, and it was kind of, the coal that they had, wasn't, they had to go down deep in the seam, but the coal was really oil based. You could just strike it with a match and throw it down there, and it would catch on fire, So that was sort of like the first coal that was discovered, but the main coal was, you had people like Collis P. Huntington running the C&O Railroad, and then you had the N&W Railroad, which is called Norfolk Southern Railroad now, going up through the coal fields along Route 52, and so those coal fields, and then you had the Pocahontas Land Company out in McDowell and Mercer and Wyoming counties. They were buying up all the land, because you got to think a place like McDowell County from all in 1960 had a population of 100,000. Now has a population of 20,000. And McDowell County had probably, like Welch, that area had probably 4% of the richest coal reserves. They were talking about McDowell County coal in Paris, France. I mean, it was the place to be, and so those extraction industries brought in a lot of wealth, but they had a lot of money with that too. Your railroad guys brought in they came in because the coal was there, and then the big companies came in and bought up a lot of the land. In West Virginia, you even look at Big Vein. That's what they call it up there, Big Vein, up in Mineral County, up near Kaiser and Piedmont and that area. And Henry Gasaway Davis. He was a railroad guy, but he also owned the Coal and Coke Railroad. That he worked as a he worked as a railroad guy, for the B&O, and then he said, I'm going to start my own gig, and then he built a railroad from from Piedmont all the way down through Davis and Thomas, which are tourist attractions now, and there in Thomas, where the Purple Fiddle is, and everybody loves to go from Washington D.C. on the weekend, and we're blessed to have them here on the weekend. And but that used to be a big coal mining in Beehive Coke Oven town. You would never notice it now. And that was Henry Gasaway Davis that ran his Coal and Coke Railroad through there, and all the way up until it went into Gasaway, West Virginia, which is in Braxton County, which that's why they named Gasaway, West Virginia. That was where he connected. I forget what railroad that was, but it went on all the way to Charleston. So the thing was, you had the railroads that came in, a lot of money involved in that, had controlled a lot of the politics. You had the big coal companies that came in, big coal operators, a lot of money, controlled a lot of the politics. And then at that time, you didn't really have unionization of coal mines, so you had a lot of workers that were mainly immigrants that were coming, especially in this area, mainly Italian, that were coming in here for a better life, and a lot of times they weren't really paid real money. They were paid script, which is phony money, which even at that time was still illegal, to do. But when you're that rich and you control the politics, then it took Mother Jones coming in from Chicago to fire people up, and it took Bill Blizzard, who's a big union guy, to get people to bear arms, literally in Marmette, and march down, into Mingo and Logan counties and try to take over a sheriff's department. It was the largest labor insurrection in U.S. history. But that came about because people were literally exploited. You had African Americans coming from the iron mines in Birmingham, up into West Virginia to work in the in the coal companies, because it was a better gig, but they're still being exploited. They still weren't getting paid money, and if they got hurt, them and their families, there was no health insurance. Them and their families got kicked out on the street in the middle of the cold winter. Because the company owned the house, the company owned the store, the company owned the money, and all the goods that came in, and they practically owned the people. And after a while, that a lot of animosity set in. A lot of people got together, and then unions started coming about, and it created a lot of friction. That's why we had the mine wars, in western southern West Virginia. Sid Hatfield, very notorious police chief of Matewan, was, the Baldwin Felts detectives, which were pretty much the police force for the coal companies, came to evict a couple of miners and their families with a fake eviction, and Sid Hatfield and Capel Testerman, which was the mayor down in the city, said, that's fake. Turn around and go back and get a real one. And said, we're not going to have any problems. Says, well, if you want problems, he says, you'll bring it on yourself, but it's not going to end up in your favor. And they had a big shootout there in Matewan where 7 Baldwin Felts detectives were shot and killed. And Capel Testerman, he was the mayor of Matewan. He was shot in the gunfight, there in Matewan. And that sort of spawned a lot of the mine wars, and coal miners in southern West Virginia were like, Sid Hatfield became a folk hero to them because he stood up to the coal companies, and then he went to trial for it in McDowell County in Welch, and he was shot dead right on the courthouse steps, right in front of his wife, and just point blank, and that's what really led to a lot of the mine wars and unionization here. But even at that, people started, I think, up here in north central West Virginia, unions were a lot easier to build, especially here in Marion County, and coal miners did pretty good, they got, good pensions and stuff, and a lot of people to fight for them, for their pensions and their wages and that sort of thing. And southern West Virginia, until 1933, not so much, So, 1933, of course, the New Deal came out, with Franklin Roosevelt, where anyone could join a union and get paid real money, but, even after that, you still have big companies coming in here, and they controlled the politics. Not to say that, they didn't bring wealth and they didn't bring jobs. They did, we're blessed for that, but at the same time, maybe they didn't pay their fair share, maybe we didn't have a coal severance tax until 1988, where, a certain portion of, how much these billionaire coal companies were making, a certain portion, maybe 5%, 6%, went back to the state to build schools and communities and to, help communities after coal would leave, because any extraction industry, it fluctuates, it's up and down. If the Chinese decide that they want to buy our coal to fire our power plants again, then that will create another 2,500 jobs in the coal fields. If they decide that they don't want to go that route and they want to go with wind and solar and stuff, that will decimate it, because 91% of that coal from the coal fields went on the N&W Railroad in Norfolk Southern on a train all the way out to Norfolk, Virginia on a barge all the way to China. So, and that happened for a lot of years. Mechanization was another thing. You just didn't have, you just didn't have 2,500 miners working in a holler, with picks and shovels digging coal. Now you had machines doing it. Next thing you know, you didn't need as many people. You had a number of things. You had natural gas that sort of came in. Natural gas was a cleaner, more efficient fuel. They could retrofit power plants in Ohio to turn natural gas into energy and electricity, and that hurt a lot too. Environmental regulations, had a little part in that too. So there's a number of things. But as for why we're a poor state, I guess economically from these extraction industries is because I don't really think we really we started just doing severance taxes on coal in 1988. That was 100 years after coal first started. And no politician in Charleston prior to 1988 was going to say, let's impose a coal severance tax on those coal companies. No, they'd be voted out the next election. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was all politics and stuff, and people did get hurt, because of that. And, not to say that, coal's not a bad thing. No, it's a good thing. It helps, a lot of people, helps sustain a lot of income, especially here in Marion County. It's not, you probably have 15,000 coal miners now. You probably had 300,000 in the 1940s. But, I think, just my honest opinion, just knowing the history of the state, is that we never really got, enough out of the severances of coal and natural gas to really move, the dial on the state and invest in that, invest in the future economic development, no matter what that is, whether it's tourism or, wind, gas, solar, could be coal. You never know if steel comes back to America, if they start manufacturing steel back here, well, we'll need metallurgical coal, and you find a lot of that in the coal fields. Like I said, extraction industries, they're really good when things are going good, and they provide a lot of jobs and a lot of wealth. But when they leave and you don't have anything else to replace them, it decimates an economy for a little while.
Okay. Since we're kind of on that vein, we'll go ahead and transition into the different areas.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll just stick to the extraction industries. I have lots of people that come to me, and they're leery of those extraction industries, or they don't want to be near them. So they don't want to be on a coal vein, or they don't want to have the risk of the gas company coming under them. Is there an area in the state that you've been to that maybe has less of that, or where you could easily find a property that, say, doesn't have a coal vein or something like that under it, to your knowledge?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when we talk about the history of West Virginia, you talk about the geological history too. You have to understand that, yes, 2/3 of our state, was once a swamp. It was once a bay, pretty much, and that bay got filled in, after the African continent finally drifted away from the North American continent. So a lot of that erosion, and then we were pretty much we're today modern day West Virginia was, back when, it was a swamp, was pretty much positioned almost where the equator was. And then we kind of moved back farther north. And as that sediment came in, you had a lot of coal deposits and coal seams that people were finding, and a lot of natural gas too. But there were other areas too in West Virginia, especially in the eastern half of the state. You look at, Hampshire County, some of Mineral County, the Eastern Panhandle, Jefferson, Morgan, Berkeley counties, Hardy County, Grant County, Tucker County, Pocahontas County, Randolph County, maybe a little bit of Greenbrier County. Those areas, if you were going to try to mine coal in those areas, boy, you'd spend $300 million just to try to get 1 million out of the ground. And so those areas are pretty much, Greenbrier County, there's still coal down there because, even our current governor, Jim Justice, owned a lot of coal mines down there. But there's a lot of areas in Greenbrier County too, along that Allegheny front, that ridge line there, where, a lot of those rocks are 430 million years old, part of the Appalachian orogeny, which was pretty much the mountain building when both the African continent and the North American continent collided. There's a lot of metamorphism that went on with those rocks, and even when those continents kind of drifted apart, those two tectonic plates, and that big old bay came in, which would become, we call it the West Virginia coal pit. It didn't really affect a lot of that eastern West Virginia region. As for like natural gas, most of the, if you could find natural gas anywhere in West Virginia, and you could, it's just in the mountains, you have to drill a little bit deeper, and that's really cost prohibitive to do. You take, most of your oil and gas are going to be in this area, especially I-79, west, you get out towards Mannington, you get out towards Wetzel County, those are big gas oil producing counties. You look at Pleasance County along the Ohio River, used to have oil out there, Quaker State and Utica Shale there. And, and there's still Utica Shale that people have not tapped yet, and so, to answer your question, if you want to be away from extraction industries, I would say that, Hardy, Grant, Pendleton, much of Randolph County, pretty much all Pocahontas County, all Pendleton County, all those, you're pretty much free of extraction. Even Monroe County, which is mainly agriculture, probably the bread, all 5th generation farms, in Monroe County. they don't have to worry about any of that either. Although the one Mountain Valley pipeline, was going to go through there, but I guess there was a federal court injunction on that. So, and now Dominion's probably going to pull out of that because it's cost prohibitive now because the natural gas industry is not really doing too well. So, and a lot of that is because of a lot of the oil cartels in the Middle East, and how they fluctuate their prices. So if they knock down the barrel of oil down to say $25 a barrel, I mean that will decimate an oil and gas industry here in this country. Once they raise it back up and you start seeing $3.50 a gallon gas prices, then you'll see oil and gas pick back up again because there's a demand for that to put more supply in the energy market as the Middle Eastern countries are cutting supply. So yeah, they answer your question. Mainly the eastern half of West Virginia is the place to be.
So if someone wanted to, say, be 100% secluded and far away from any major populace, what county or area would you say? Like, in my opinion, it's like most of the state. But specifically, is there an area that you know of that's like super secluded, hard to get to? Like, if you wanted to be where nobody's going to look, that's where you'd go?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Pocahontas County is one, because Pocahontas County is about 65% national forest, so 65% public land. So anyone that owns property, pretty much most of them border national forest unless you're in Marlinton, or in a town somewhere. And that's a pretty secluded area. I mean, that's where I was raised. I mean, you had to drive 10 miles to the little IGA grocery store, which was pretty small. The county has 9,000 people in it, and it's the third largest county in the state, geographic wise, and so Pendleton County is another one too. That's a predominantly really rural county, although you get a lot of tourists coming in and out there, from Virginia and DC going to Seneca Rocks, but predominantly that's pretty rural. Pockets of Randolph County are the same way. Pickens, Helvetia, which is culturally is a predominantly Swiss community. There's a big history behind that too, and there's rural pockets of Clay County just off the interstate. You go up through places like Wyden. I mean, it's way out in the middle of nowhere. No one's going to find you up there. No one wants to go up there. It's just it's just beautiful country, and there's really not a whole lot up there. And like I said, even in the southern coal fields, there's places in Mingo County, in the coal fields that are, really isolated. Places in McDowell County, in southern McDowell County, outside of War and Bradshaw, and that are very, very isolated. And so yeah.
So what if somebody was looking for like more gently rolling land and or flat?
Flat land in West Virginia. Good luck with that, unless you live in the Ohio Valley. But
right.
Yeah.
I've driven. What was it? 2. I was driving 2 one time and I almost fell asleep because it was just too flat and straight.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Ohio Valley is it's flat, but the Ohio Valley also, it's interesting with the Ohio Valley. So if you say you go up to, say if you go up to Wheeling, okay, so you have Wheeling, of course it's flat because it's along the river. But as soon as you get out of Wheeling, into Triadelphia, which is like a suburb, or or even heading up into Burke County, up towards Bethany, it's all hills. I mean, and that's the way the whole Ohio Valley is. You look at Huntington in Cabell County, second largest city in the state. It used to be the largest city of the state because it was really the center of the coal industry, where the market of it was and where all the money went. And but you get outside of Huntington, on 8th Street Road going out towards Wayne County, out towards Lavallette. Well, guess what? It's a bunch of hills, So yeah, really your whole Ohio Valley region, even through Mason County, which is pretty predominantly farm community along the Ohio River up towards Point Pleasant, it's all flat along the river. You may get like a couple miles until you hit the hills, but really there's other than the Eastern Panhandle too. I mean, the Eastern Panhandle, you'll have some flat areas. You get into Jefferson County, towards Shepherdstown and Harper's Ferry in that area. there's a lot of farms out there. Used to be a lot of apple orchards out there, huge apple orchard industry out there until the blight hit it in the 1960s. And there's still some apple orchards out there, but even along like U.S. Route 522 that takes you up from Winchester right through the heart of Morgan County up through Berkeley Springs. I mean, that area is flat, on both sides, Capon State Park. But you go up where Berkeley Springs is and you go up Route 9, well, guess what? Just like that, so anywhere you go in the state, I think, mainly your flat areas, they're not really too flat.
Yeah.
Usually it's your river valley regions and stuff.
I feel like that eastern part, like around Greenbrier, I've recently been there for the first time, and I feel like it was more gentle. Am I crazy?
Yeah. Well, like Greenbrier County, if you're heading up into like, northwestern Greenbrier County up towards Trout, of course, it's very mountainous up there. But if you come down into the valley, like through White Sulphur Springs and Lewisburg, there's mountains, but they're more spread apart.
Yeah.
And then you have the Greenbrier River, which that valley is pretty spread out. You have the Greenbrier Hotel Resort there in White Sulphur, and that's predominantly flat. And even when you go on, 92, like you're going into Pocahontas County and 92 North, up through Neill and stuff, it's predominantly flat rolling hills and stuff. Because a lot of that area is like there's a lot of big mountains there, but they're more spread apart. You get more into like Clay County, the mountains are not as high, the hills are not as high, but they're more packed together.
Right.
You get into the coal fields, the hills are a little bit higher than the hills in Clay County, and they're very packed together. We're talking like hollers. So that's just the thing. It's like it's like going out here and we just go out here in 250 up through Fairmont. We take 250 all the way, through Marion County up into Wetzel County through Reeder and all those areas. Those are not too flat. No. You take Route 20, which kind of takes you into 250 going into New Martinsville, wherever. That's, well, no, 250 here will take you up through Cameron and into Moundsville, but you go up Route 20 from Lumberport all the way to New Martinsville. It is, and those are rolling hills. Those are just hills, but they're tightly packed.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, did you need some water?
Oh no, thanks.
Okay. How about if someone wanted to feel secluded, but they wanted to be like 30 minutes from the grocery store, the amenities, the town? What area would you think, like, and it can even be as broad as like North Central is great because we've got Fairmont, Morgantown, Clarksburg, pretty much anywhere in North Central you're going to be there, but where's the place that you would say, like, if you wanted to feel secluded but be close to town, that would be cool?
I think that would be any kind of major town in West Virginia being close to. So, you look at even coal fields. Logan, they have that, they have, they blew the side off that mountain there where Quarter G is. They built a Walmart and a nice little strip mall there right along US 19, which is a 4-lane Quarter G. You could drive up Route 44, up where Devil Anse is buried, and it's secluded, take you right up there to Horsepen Mountain in Mingo County, but you're still only a 30-minute drive from Logan, which has amenities. You look at Huntington.
Does Logan have a hospital?
Like, yes, they do. Yeah.
When we talk amenities, let's like medical would be like number one thing that people want.
Okay. Yeah, and Logan, Logan does have a hospital. It's a pretty decent sized hospital. It's kind of built on the side of the river. It's kind of interesting looking hospital, but they call it the, I guess, Logan Regional Medical Center. It's a good place. You wouldn't have any major surgery there, but if you need to be stabilized and stuff, it'd be really good hospital. Most of your medical centers in West Virginia are like that too. If anything else is a little bit hairy, then they usually just life flight you somewhere. But Huntington is another good example. Huntington, of course, has a lot of amenities there. You have Marshall University. You have 2 major hospitals there. St. Mary's, Medical Center, which is in the top 50 in the country when it comes to cardiac care. Cabell Huntington Hospital, which is probably, one of the more notable hospitals in the region. A lot of research and development, from the med school out of Marshall University is there. So, they could do just about anything there, trauma, you name it. You take even places like Martinsburg up along Interstate 81 through Berkeley County. I mean, if you want to go out through, Shanghai, West Virginia, and up on Sleepy Mountain, those are nice little secluded bedroom communities out there. Up along Route 9 there, you have Hedgesville. You're not far from Martinsburg. Martinsburg has a VA medical center there and a hospital there. And you're not far from like Winchester, Virginia, if you need to go to a major hospital. So there's some amenities there. I mean, there's, anywhere outside of Lewisburg. Lewisburg is home to the osteopathic school.
I saw that. That was so cool.
And so they, and I wouldn't say Lewisburg has like the best hospital, but, they probably have folks that, from the osteopathic school that are there just, doing some internships and stuff. So you, in any place where you're near a university or a school, that's a lot of R&D, research and development, in the medical field, you feel pretty safe, and of course, Morgantown, WVU, that's probably the biggest network in the state. But like, even, you look along the Ohio River Valley there, if you live in, say if you live up in, Proctor, West Virginia, or way up in the hollers of Wetzel County, New Martinsville has a hospital too, little medical center up there. So, so there's a lot of different, places where you're 30 minutes away. I say pretty much anywhere you go along near a major town in West Virginia. Major town, what I mean is like any town like over 5,000, 6,000 people. You're going to find, you're going to have amenities and you're going to have medical centers. So.
Okay. What area would you recommend for outdoor enthusiasts? What's do you think is the best, if you really like being outside, what's the best?
I think, if you want to be more touristy, I think it's Fayette County. You have the, I guess it's called ACE. It's like they're, if you like whitewater rafting and rappelling and, that sort of thing. I mean, Fayette County is like the playground, for West Virginia. I mean, if you like skiing, of course, there's snowshoe, in Pocahontas County. There's, you got Winter Place down in Raleigh County, outside of Beckley. You have Timberline and West Virginia's first ski resort, Canaan Valley. That's good winter outdoor activity. If you like, generally, if you like just any of the outdoors, but you want to kind of be more low key, just maybe camp, whatever. I mean, we have 36 state parks across our state. And you go anywhere just about. You drive down 50 here to Ritchie County to North Bend and North Bend State Park along the Hughes River and feel like you're out in the middle of nowhere. And they have trails and stuff. I mean, they even have a wild food festival where they once a year they have a bunch of people come in and they not only do workshops and teach people like wild plants that you can eat, but they take those wild plants and then they make them into cuisines and they have a big festival for it.
Is that North Bend?
Yes, North Bend. Yeah.
That one's like what, 40 minutes from Parkersburg-ish?
From Parkersburg, it's probably about 20 minutes. Yeah, it's not far at all.
I recently
looked at a place called Cairo.
Yeah, I recently looked at a property in Cairo for myself.
Oh, really?
It was sold.
Oh yeah.
It was so cool. It was like 5 minutes from North Bend and like 20 minutes from Parkersburg. I was like, I love that. But
yeah, the thing is, I mean, you asked a question before about the extraction industries. People don't want to live a lot beside oil and gas, but there's a lot of oil and gas in Ritchie County. I mean, it pretty much almost defines a place, but there's a lot of really nice places in Ritchie County. I mean, you got to think. I mean, the oil and gas extraction, maybe it's not as bad as maybe like a mountaintop removal site or a strip mine or something like that. It takes years and years to reclaim and look somewhat to its natural beauty or how you can use it for something else, And I'm not for or against mountaintop removal or for or against natural gas. I mean, there's good things about it. There's not so good things about it. It just depends, whether the companies are responsible or not.
Mm-hmm.
And responsible companies are usually pretty responsible, and they put stuff back to its natural order, to the most part. There's risk in anything, but some people may call that risk, a bad thing. Some people call it progress, so that's just the thing. You take a place like Ritchie County. They drill for gas there all the time. They have well pads, but after they're done, you usually don't really notice it too much anymore. So
do you know how long it usually takes them to get done?
I don't.
By
I
chance?
couldn't tell
No?
you. Yeah. Like I would say, like a well pad. If they were drilling for a well, drilling a well. Say if that well was producing well for like a year, and then it was tapped out. Even after it's a well pad. You just have like a small concrete slab, and you have these pipes, and then everything else you got grass around it. So it's not like they could really. My buddy out in Lumberport, they were just storing oil and gas equipment in his backyard, and they did that for, I don't know, it was probably 6-7 months. And after they left, within 2 months, they resodded all the grass and everything, and it looked like it didn't look any different than when they first went down there. Yeah, it was interesting. Yeah, so when you're doing strip mining, it's a little bit different. There's going to be some scars, and I'm not really a huge proponent of strip mining, because I'm more. I think you could, I want more jobs for our coal miners. So if you take a place like Mingo County and you strip Grapevine Mountain, of its coal, yeah, you'll hire 300 people to do that for 10 years, or you could hire to go underground and get better quality coal. And don't have all that shale mixed into it and stuff. You could hire probably. You probably hire 3,500 people for the next 50 years, mining that, underground. So, but, to each its own, I'm not like I said, I'm not really for or against it,
Do you hunt at all?
I went hunting probably a couple times in my life. Yeah. I'm just, be honest with you, even growing up in Pocahontas County, I've had people take me out hunting, like I said, a couple times. And, I'm more of a trout fisherman. I love wading the streams, and even when it's 0 degrees outside, you'll still find me out there in a pair of waders and my boots, wading in water that has ice in it, and because there's more action. Hunting's mainly like you got to sit and wait and be patient. And I'm not a patient guy, so. But
right.
there's a lot of good hunting in West Virginia. I think anywhere you go in West Virginia, there's good hunting. Yeah.
That to me, that's like, I've got friends all over the state, and all of them have trophy bucks or whatever.
Right,
but
yeah.
I have people ask me all the time, "What's the best hunting?" And I'm like, West Virginia.
Absolutely. Well, you got to think, there's a lot of good like wildlife management areas that the DNR runs. Heck, you can go to Mason County. There's, you have the McClinic, where they used to do, we used to test all that TNT. The federal government did all that, where I guess the Mothman used to have sightings with. That's a wildlife management area. People go out there and hunt. You have Pleasant Creek out here on the Taylor Barber County border. You could hunt out there. All your state forest. We have 9 state forests across our state. And they're vast. You look at Cumbrabo, which is kind of a weird name, but it's.
I can't say it.
It took me years
before, and I was like, "What is that?"
But up in Randolph County, that thing stretches miles. People hunt there, and then of course people hunt on private land. They get permission and stuff. I'd say, anywhere in West Virginia, I say there's hunting going on in every county in West Virginia. I'm pretty sure in Hancock and Brooke County, people are hunting out there. Maybe not as much, but, there's probably places where people are hunting out there.
Do you know of any places that have a strong homesteading and or farming community like already there for people who want maybe like-minded people? Do you know of any place that's like already like strong farming community?
Oh yeah, Monroe County. Yeah, down in Union, Peterstown. That is farm country at its finest right there. And those folks, they're very protective. And understandably, when I drive through Union, West Virginia, and I'm new and I'm taking pictures, and people are kind of looking at me, they're skeptical, not mean or anything, they just don't wave. They're just kind of like, what's he doing here? Is he a land surveyor or something for the pipeline? I mean, and rightfully so. Those farms have been, in those families for like 4 or 5 generations. You take, you look at places in Putnam County, going up the Kanawha River all the way up into, up into Point Pleasant there, where the Kanawha goes into the Ohio. But Putnam County is a farm area there too. Places like Liberty in Putnam County. You look at, Mason County, a lot of farms there too. You go out even the eastern half of the state, like in Hardy County, and Grant County, and some of Pendleton County. Those big valleys out there on the south branch of the Potomac. Those are, that's mainly the I call it the chicken capital of the state of West Virginia, poultry, but predominantly farming. Farming is a big part of that area of the state. You look at Hampshire County, which is just right above Hardy County. There's some poultry up there, but there's just regular beef cattle up there too. Pig farmers, you name it. Going to Greenbrier County, there's some farming too, along the valleys and stuff. But I would say, if you're really into farming, and Monroe County is it. That is the place. Monroe, Hardy County, those two are big farming communities up there. So, you look at even Preston County, although, it's kind of Ridge and Valley region, but, you take up places like Brewston Mills up along the Interstate 68 there, and going out through there before you hit the mountains going into Cool Springs. I mean, there's a lot of farming up there too.
Okay. I feel like you kind of already answered this one, but if you could pick any place in the state to live, where would it be and why?
Oh man, any place to live. I would say, for me, I guess it would be Pocahontas County. I would love to have me a little cabin up on top of Spruce Flats in Pocahontas County. Right at the start of the Oswego Creek. Right there at the, near the scenic highway, and that's really isolated. As for a place to live that I think is, close to amenities and stuff, but good quality of life too, good community, good culture. I would say either Clarksburg, Fairmont, or Morgantown. Those three. It's like I live in Clarksburg because I want to. It was when I was going around the whole state, and saying, okay, this is where Wayne Worth wants to live.
Right, because when you chose to live there, you'd already been around 3 times.
Yeah, 3 times. Yeah, at the time, and so that's just the thing. I mean, of course, people are going to move here into the state for different reasons, mainly for jobs. Like, you got to think people moving from out of state into Clarksburg or Fairmont, they're moving here either because they're going into the medical field or working at Milan, or they're going into, or they're working at the FBI Center, which employs like 3,000 people. And so, and those things are good, that brings people here, and they get a more of appreciation for West Virginia. But I think, a lot of times we don't really talk about, our people. It's just like when you live here in West Virginia, you could drive by, I could drive in downtown Fairmont, and I could wave at somebody, and I tell you what, I could wave at 10 people, and about 7 of them will wave back. You can't get that anywhere else. And that's wonderful. I could do the same thing in Huntington because I lived in Huntington for 11 years. I could do the same thing in Beckley. I could definitely do the same thing in Pocahontas or Randolph County, and 10 out of 10 will wave back at me. And that's just the thing. I mean, you got, it's a little bit more neighborly here. I mean, of course, with the drug problem, I mean, neighbors, neighbors are not so neighborly, but there's drug problems all over the country, and we're doing our best, to try to eradicate that, or at least to try to remedy it from a, not only from a supply, going after the supply side with law enforcement, but also from a demand side by trying to give people help in the treatment, and recovery. So we, I think West Virginia culturally has a good balance of people. I mean, I think people will meet folks halfway if you're not trying to pull one over them. And we're smart people. We know when people are, BSing us or not. And that's just the thing. I mean, I mean, of course, every county has its own culture, you know, and a lot of that is because of our mountains and our geographic isolation because of those hills and mountains. And a lot of it is because of our schools. You know, we used to have everything centered around the school. You know, like Lincoln County had 4 high schools before it consolidated into one. You know, you had Harts, you had Duval, you had West Hamlin, and you had Hamlin. You know, Hamlin was where Chuck Yeager went to high school. You know, I mean, so, and you had those, and those were the pillars of the community. You know, anywhere you go, like you're probably, I mean, if you're from Marion County, which part of Marion County you're from?
Joetown.
You're Joetown, okay. So you probably, you know, you probably went to North Marion High School.
I did.
So the thing is, I mean, you know, you're a Husky. I mean, and that's pretty big up there. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's the center of that community up there. You know, I'm a Warrior from Pocahontas County. We have 1 high school in the whole county. You know, and you know, I mean, you know, when I see pictures of people playing basketball in the gym that I used to sit and hold hands with my girlfriend at, my high school sweetheart, I mean, it gives me chills. You know, it's home. You know, and I always say, you know, that's part of you. That's part of your culture. You know, and that's part of things that are sacred and important to you. Your church, your school, your family. You know, and those things become more. You know, the politics of that community. Those things become more real. You know, when you could look out this window here and you can't see the other side of that hill. It becomes more real, more close, you know, and that's all over West Virginia. I tell people all the time, I'm like, West Virginians come together for 3 occasions: Mountaineer football game day, when we see each other at Myrtle Beach, and during floods, natural disasters. That's really only 3 times we come together as a whole state, say, hey, you know, we need to do this. Any other time, it's just kind of like, you know, where are you from? Oh, I'm a Marion County girl. Where are you from? I said, oh, I'm a Pocahontas County guy. You know, I mean, from Pocahontas County. You know, no one says, I mean, unless you live in a bigger city, you mean, you know, if you're from Joetown, you're not going to say, oh, I'm from Joetown. You're going to say, no, I'm from Marion County. If someone, from Beckley asks you where you're from, you know, now if you're living in Fairmont, you may say, yeah, I'm from Fairmont.
Yeah.
You know,
usually we say Fairmont-ish.
Right. There you go.
We're from Fairmont-ish. And when they're like, where's that? We're like, Morgantown?
Right. Yeah. So, and that's just the thing. We identify ourselves by the county that we live in. Okay. And with that said, you know, that's why the On the Road in West Virginia series took off like it did. Because when you tell the story of a place, you know, of a county that is very, you know,
nobody knows where it is or cares.
Right. No one knows where it is or cares, but the people in that county care about it. I care about it because I got to know those people. I got to know that culture, you know, got to know that history, you know, I mean, you know, got to know why towns are named after what they're named after, you know, and that's just the thing, you know, we identify our home with our county, with our school, you know, with our church, you know, and a lot of times in even the southern coal fields, you know, industry has a lot of influence on our culture too. So, because those are things that, you know, I mean, when people come in and they say, hey, we want to bring a bunch of windmills up on Coal River Mountain there in Boone County, you know, yeah, you may have a handful of people that want that, but guess what? You got a vast amount of people that say, you know what? We don't want that. We want to keep coal here, you know, and a lot of that's because it's the only thing that's going on that's good down there, you know, or was going on that was good down there, and it was the only thing that was keeping their grandson, you know, or their son from having to move out of state. You know, family is so important, and we'll do anything for family, you know, anything, and you know, and that's not a bad thing, and that's sort of our culture, you know, our faith, our family, our community, keeping that intact. We'll do anything to preserve that sort of culture, and that's what you have in West Virginia, and each county is its own little subculture.
Yeah. So, is there any place in the state that you wouldn't want to live, and if so, why?
Well, you know,
just personally,
I don't.
You sound like I don't like the state.
I love the state. I mean, tremendously. There's no place in this state where I would not want to live, and here's why. Okay, even some of the places that have a lot of challenges. Okay, McDowell County has a lot of challenges. You're talking about 4% of the world's richest coal reserves, 100,000 people, in 1960, that lived there. Welch, West Virginia in 1950, having 3,000 people in the streets. It's amazing for a little place like Welch. Today, pretty much most of it, a lot of it's boarded up. They're doing the best they can. They painted some murals on the buildings. They got a marquee cinema there. They're doing good because people care about that community, and they're revitalizing that, and that's great. That's what that's home to them. So you want to make it the best they can make it. With that said, there are communities that are facing a lot of challenges that maybe a lot of people would say, well, that's a little bit less desirable for me to want to live in. But for me, I don't think there's any place in West Virginia I wouldn't want to live in, because anywhere I go, like even if I live way out in the middle of Bradshaw, West Virginia, way down to the depths of McDowell County, where things are just collapsing on themselves because people are just moving out in droves. The thing about West Virginia is, no matter where you live, someone like me, someone like you, we can make a difference in that community if we care enough. And if we care enough, we have people in West Virginia that also care enough too, and be like, we're with you, and we'll make this place a little better. You look at a place like Whitesville, West Virginia. That's right on the border of Boone and Raleigh County, right on Route 3 there. They had the Upper Big Branch disaster there, but Whitesville was kind of like an old washed out coal town. Still kind of is. The buildings are old. A lot of them are vacant. But what did they do after that coal mining disaster? They didn't want to be defined by that. That was part of their history. They got the coal company to build a big, huge memorial there. Beautiful memorial. One of the best coal miner memorials in the country, if not the best. The Upper Big Branch Memorial there. And guess what they built? They built a river walk beside it where people could exercise. They cleaned up the Coal River a little bit along the sides there. The mayor down there, I think his name is Chad or Charlie Prater. Bringing, made it part of the Coal Heritage Highway, bringing people in, telling the story of the community. A few little retail businesses are starting to pop up. People are starting to believe in that community again. And the reason why is because, someone cared. You know what I'm saying? That's just the thing. That's the beautiful thing about this state. It's like, when you really put your heart in a community that faces a lot of challenges, people recognize that in that community, and they get behind it. They start taking leadership roles, and they start working together to make something better. I love Whitesville. It's a great place to go now. I really do. It still has its challenges, but Fairmont has its challenges. Clarksburg, that I absolutely love and adore, has its challenges. Any place that you go to in the country has its challenges, but the great thing about West Virginia is that you could live anywhere in the state, in any town, and if you care enough, you can make a difference, because people are looking for that. They are, and people receive that very well in our state. You go to New York City and try to do that, it'd probably take you a lifetime just to get your little borough to say, hey, let's care about one another. Let's revitalize this park. Not here in West Virginia. You could take something that's falling apart, and you could say, you know what, I'm just going to get my shovel out there tomorrow, and I'm just going to improve it a little bit. And by next week, you're going to have 5 more people helping you out, and possibly a county commissioner. Seriously, that is how close knit we are as people here. You look at our churches. Our churches, our faith. We put our faith into action around here. Yeah, sometimes we have disagreements with folks and everything, and sometimes we get mad and stuff. But hey, when it comes to our faith, we do love our neighbors here. We do the best we can to love our neighbors, and we love our community. We want to see our community grow. We want to see our kids grow up in a nice place and sort of pass down those traditions, of serving community, serving one another. So you could be, in West Virginia, you could live anywhere. I would live anywhere in West Virginia because I know, I could be a big fish in a small pond, okay? And I could get other big fish in that pond too to work with me and make a difference. Whether that's in Welch, West Virginia, whether that's in Weirton, whether that's in Marlton, whether that's in Fairmont, Clarksburg, whether that's way out in Calhoun County and Grantsville. I would live anywhere in this state.
Awesome. I think that's gonna just about do it.